Silence. Global crisis. Doors closing. Fear in the hearts of many. But the Bible says something that almost no one realizes. While some break, others thrive in the midst of the crisis. And it's not luck. It's not about money. It's a principle. Today you will discover 14 biblical principles that sustained Joseph in Egypt, Elijah in the desert, Daniel in Babylon, and the church in times of persecution. If you apply just one of them, your perspective changes. If you apply all of them, your life will never be the same again. Before continuing, like this video and subscribe. This helps this message reach those who are almost giving up. Now, get ready. Because the first principle begins where most people fail. Silence. Before the crisis shows up on the bank statement, it's already in your mind. Before scarcity could touch her hands, she tried to control her thoughts. This is where it all begins. And this is where many fall. Because the crisis doesn't destroy resources first. She tries to destroy convictions. Those who lose mental clarity in the chaos soon lose their spiritual direction. And that is why the first biblical principles do not mention money. They speak of the mind. From a vision standpoint. Decoration. Principle 1. Do not compromise your faith when the situation worsens. Every crisis forces you to be more flexible about what was previously a conviction. Pressed to give in. Adjusting values. To justify shortcuts. Joseph was betrayed, sold, and forgotten. But at no point did he negotiate who he was. Even far from his father, even far from the promise, he kept his faith intact. The crisis silently asks, do you still trust when you don't understand? Do you still obey when you see no reward? Those who thrive in a crisis are not those who have all the answers. It is the one who refuses to abandon their faith when everything goes dark. The Bible shows a clear pattern. God does not support shortcuts. He holds convictions. Principle 2. Discerning times and seasons. The crisis is not a punishment. It's not always an attack. It is often a transition. The mistake many people make is to treat every difficult time as abandonment by God. But the Bible reveals something deeper. There is a time to plant and a time to harvest. Joseph spent years being prepared in silence. The promise was not broken. She has matured. Those who cannot discern the right time try to harvest in the wrong season. Forced doors. He gets frustrated. He gets tired. Thriving in crisis requires spiritual maturity to ask, what is God forming in me right now? And not only that, when will this end? A phrase that changes everything. Those who understand the season don't give up during the process. Principle 3. Guard your heart above all else. The crisis attempts to instill bitterness, envy, comparison, and fear. And it almost always succeeds. A wounded heart sees a threat in everything. Loses spiritual sensitivity. It begins to react, not to discern. The Bible is straightforward. Above all else, guard your heart. For from him flow the springs of life. Hosea had every reason to harden his heart. But she chose to remain sensitive. And that is why God continued speaking to him. Those who thrive in crisis don't let pain dictate their decisions, even if fear guides the choices. Because when the heart closes, the vision narrows. And where there is no vision, the people perish. The crisis reveals where your anchor lies. If it depends on what you have, or in who God is. And here is the truth that few accept. God protects resources when He first protects the mind. If you master this first battlefield, the remainder of the crisis loses momentum. But be careful. Those who conquer the mind still need to learn how to act correctly. Because faith without action becomes merely resistance. And that's exactly what we're going to see in the next principle. The crisis doesn't ask if you're ready. She simply arrives. And when it arrives, there is a silent error that destroys more destinies than scarcity itself. Paralysis. Many pray. They cry out. They are waiting. But they don't move. And the Bible is clear. God acts, but He does not shirk responsibility. This is where the principles of action come in. Because thriving in a crisis isn't just about surviving. It's about knowing how to act when everything seems stuck. Principle 4. Work with excellence even when no one is watching. The crisis tries to convince you that effort is no longer worthwhile. Doing the bare minimum is justifiable. Excellence is a waste in difficult times. Jose could have been just another rebellious slave. But he chose to work as if he were serving God himself. And the biblical text reveals something powerful. Everything he did prospered. Excellence does not depend on a favorable environment. It reveals who you really are when the situation is unfair. Those who abandon excellence in times of crisis close doors that God would still open. Principle 5. Be faithful in little things before asking for much. The crisis is easing. Dry it. Limit. And that's exactly where God is watching. Most people want stability in order to be faithful. But the Bible shows the opposite. Loyalty precedes expansion. Joseph was faithful in Potiphar's house. Faithful in prison. Before becoming loyal in the palace. God never promotes someone who despises little things. Because those who don't take care of the small things won't be able to support the big ones. A phrase that challenges. The crisis reveals whether you manage or simply consume. Principle 6. Understand that obedience precedes provision. This principle changes everything. Many await provision in order to obey. But in the Bible, provision always follows obedience. Elijah only saw the oil multiply after obeying the word. Pedro only saw the nets were full after casting the ball again. Obedience in times of crisis requires courage, because you act without any visible guarantee. But that's exactly what activates the supernatural. Those who try to negotiate obedience while expecting security never experience full provision. The crisis exposes the kind of faith you hold. A conditional faith, or an obedient faith. Thriving in a crisis isn't about making impulsive moves. It's about aligning action with direction. It's not about running. It's about moving forward with purpose. And here is the truth that few want to hear. God does not bless inertia disguised as spirituality. Praying without action is running away from the truth. Acting without direction is risky. But acting obediently leads to progress, even in the desert. If you apply these principles, something changes immediately. You move out of the victim position, and he assumes the position of co-worker with God. But there is something even deeper. Because even those who act correctly can falter if they don't learn to depend on the right source. And that's exactly what we're going to reveal in the next principle. When the crisis deepens, something inevitable happens. Resources are starting to fail. What sustained us yesterday no longer sustains us today. What seemed secure becomes unstable. And then the question arises that confronts the soul. Who do you really trust? This is where many get lost. Because while the resource runs out, the source continues. And the Bible has always made that distinction. Principle 7. Trust the source more than the resource. The resource is the channel. The source is God. When the canal dries up, those who rely solely on it fall into despair. But those who know the source remain at peace. Elijah saw the sky close in. He saw the stream dry up. But he never saw God fail. The crisis did not come to destroy Elijah. He came to teach him not to depend on a single means. A phrase that changes perspective. God never depends on what he uses to sustain you. When a resource fails, God simply changes the channel. Principle 8. Listen to God's direction before acting. Crisis generates noise, opinions, pressures, conflicting advice. But those who learn to listen in silence prosper. God told Elijah when to stay, when to leave, and where to go. If he had acted on impulse, he would have starved to death. The problem is not taking action. It's acting without direction. In a crisis, hasty decisions are costly. But well-guided decisions preserve the future. The Bible shows that God speaks. But not everyone stops to listen. Those who thrive in crisis learn to slow down from within, even when everything demands haste on the outside. Principle 9. Depend daily, not occasionally. The crisis reveals a type of fragile faith. A faith that seeks God only when things get tough. But biblical provision was never weekly. It was always daily. The manna fell every day. Those who tried to accumulate wealth lost everything. God was teaching something profound. Constant dependence produces true security. The crisis shatters the illusion of control. And that's not a loss. It's liberation. Because while you're trying to control everything, God expects you to trust Him. A phrase that challenges. Those who have little reliance on God often despair during a crisis. Thriving spiritually in difficult times does not mean the absence of fear. It means not allowing fear to govern decisions. Daily dependence adjusts the heart. Clear away false expectations. Refine your faith. And here's the key point. When you depend on the source, provision ceases to be a source of anxiety and becomes a consequence. But be careful. Depending on God doesn't mean stagnating. Nor should we spiritualize scarcity. It means walking with Him, step by step, even without seeing the whole map. And when that happens, something powerful is activated. God not only sustains, He prepares for growth. And that's exactly what we're going to understand in the next principle. Crises don't just come to test what you have. She comes to reveal who you are becoming. While many are merely trying to survive, God is shaping character. While some count losses, the sky observes growth. And here's an uncomfortable truth. Not all pressure is meant to destroy. A lot of pressure comes into play when preparing. Principle 10. Maintain integrity when no one is asking for it. In times of crisis, eyes look away. Supervision is reduced. The rules seem flexible. It is in this environment that integrity becomes optional for many. But for God, she remains non-negotiable. Daniel was far from home, far from the temple, far from any system that could monitor him. Even so, he decided not to get infected. Integrity is not what you do when you're being watched. It's what you preserve when nobody's looking. And here's the secret. God entrusts growth to those to whom He can entrust character. Principle 11. Learn from the pressure instead of cursing it. The crisis is tightening. Compare. It exposes limitations. And the common reaction is to complain, question, resist. But the Bible shows another way. Joseph did not curse the prison. He learned from her. The pressure revealed skills, maturity, and leadership. What seemed like a delay was actually training. A phrase that redefines everything. The pressure you resist may delay you. The pressure that you understand can promote. Thriving in crisis requires the humility to learn. Even when it hurts. Even when it doesn't make sense. Principle 12. Prepare today for tomorrow's opportunity. The crisis reduces visible opportunities. But it increases the invisible preparation. While many wait for the door to open, God expects you to be ready to go through it. Jose learned about administration before he governed. Daniel learned wisdom before influencing kings. The mistake many people make is wishing for the future without preparing for the present. The Bible is clear. Preparation time is never wasted. Those who thrive during a crisis are not those who accelerate the process. It is he who matures within it. And here's a serious warning. Promotion without preparation becomes a disguised fall. God does not waste crises. He uses them as furnaces. Furnaces reveal gold. But only for those who stay. Thriving in an adverse environment doesn't necessarily mean immediate growth in numbers. It means growing from within. And those who grow internally will sustain what they receive externally. But something is still missing. Because growing up without direction can lead to arrogance. And thriving without purpose can be destructive. Therefore, the final principles are crucial. And it is precisely to them that we go now. The crisis doesn't just define who falls. It reveals who remains. Many are going through difficult times. Few cross over and emerge greater than when they entered. And the difference was never in the size of the crisis. It has always been in how prosperity is treated afterwards. This is where everything comes together. Or it gets lost. Principle 13. Honor God even after victory. As the crisis intensifies, most people seek God intensely. But when the door opens, something dangerous happens. Dependence decreases. Gratitude grows cold. Faith relaxes. The Bible shows that prosperity without honor leads to oblivion. And forgetfulness leads to downfall. Joseph, now governor, has not forgotten God. Daniel, exalted among kings, continued praying. Honor kept the sky open. A phrase that challenges. It is not the crisis that drives many away from God. It is comfort. To thrive in lasting success requires remembering who supported you when no one else could. Principle 14. Use prosperity as a tool, not as a destination. Here's a subtle mistake. To transform what God gives into an ultimate purpose. The Bible never presents prosperity as an end goal. She's kind of instrument, responsibility. When prosperity becomes an idol, it takes control. But when it becomes a tool, its impact increases. Joseph used his position to save nations. Daniel used his influence to preserve the faith in hostile environments. Prosperity without purpose is a burden. Prosperity with purpose is a legacy. And here is the truth that seals the entire message. God doesn't prosper people just for their own sake. He helps people thrive in order to help others thrive. The crisis was the way forward. The principles were the foundation. But the goal was always bigger than you. When someone goes through a crisis with God, she not only survives, she becomes the answer. And that changes everything. Because now you understand something that many never realize. Crises pass. Systems change. Economies fluctuate. But those who live by principles remain standing. If this message resonated with you, don't let it die here. Enjoy this video now. Subscribe to the channel. Write in the comments, "I choose to live by principles." This statement is not just a sentence. It's a decision. And decisions guided by God always lead to lasting prosperity.